Councillor Russell Perrin, shadow finance portfolio holder. How did you feel, from a point of opposition, how did you feel your proposal for an alternative budget went?
It went as I expected, which was for it to be voted down. You expect that in opposition, although I was pleased the other year that the administration agreed with my move to have a STEM reserve which promoted STEM learning across the town, and they created a fund based on the work I'd done. So I was really pleased with that, and we proposed an alternative budget to top that up, and the administration have done that. So I'm really pleased that they've gone with us on that. But on the substantive, in terms of council tax rises, in terms of investment priorities, they've gone in a completely different direction to us.
And what direction is that?
Well, we found that looking at the budget, there was sufficient money there to maintain all of our discretionary services, so it's things like the museum, paddling pools, playgrounds, all those kinds of things. And we've actually found that we could see where the money was to bring them into the council's main budget, so it puts them on a permanent footing for a long time. The council have decided not to do that, and they've kept them out in a discretionary services fund, a reserve fund as it were. But we found the money to bring them back in. So we found the money to keep those services secure and on a permanently financed footing, increase the financing for those, but at the same time we found money to issue a 0.25% council tax cut. So effectively, the difference between us and the Labour administration is if you go with the Labour administration, council tax will be 2.24% higher than it would be under a Conservative administration at the town.
Was not the dispute on the other night that they felt there were some, say for example, Essex County councils or Harlow councils were supporting one increase in council tax in Essex, but not supporting a council tax increase in Harlow? Is that contradictory?
This is often an argument that the Labour administration put forward, but they're more of a protest party rather than a party of governance. They're in charge at the town, so they have their levers on their hands on the levers of power, and they will often cite what other people are doing rather than what they're doing. What they fail to forget is that Essex County Council has to look after social care, has to look after highways. They look after roads that a road network that's larger than Northern Ireland. They are a town council that doesn't have to worry about those things, and so when you're looking at that budget, and as we clearly pointed out, there is scope for a council tax cut. Just because everybody else is doing one thing, it doesn't mean that you have to follow suit. And so it's quite acceptable for in one authority for the council tax to go up, whilst in another authority that has completely different responsibilities and budgetary pressures to do something else. So the two aren't contradictory at all. And Essex County Council within their own budget have actually said that anybody that's coming out of care up until the age of 21 will not have to pay council tax. So they're looking after the most vulnerable where they can. But when it comes to Labour and Harlow, they are in control. They have the power to do something about it. They've chosen not to. That's the difference, you see. They will protest about what other people are doing instead of looking at what they're doing and what they could change and what they can control. I'm elected as a councillor for Harlow, so are my colleagues. We're worrying about Harlow, and actually if Essex have to put the council tax up, that's the reason why they're doing it, but we didn't have to add to that burden.
Do you sometimes feel as well that not all the times the officers and Labour members are totally in control of their brief? And I might take you back to the incident regarding Pet's Corner and miscalculation. Does that concern you? Because they were belittling you at the time.
Yeah, it does concern me because mistakes do happen. We're all human. But the moment you bring up a legitimate point of concern, rather than, like they say, they want to be the responsible party, rather than going away and looking at your concern and investigating that, they will barrack, laugh, shout, jeer. And in terms of Pet's Corner, I pointed out to them that on their budget papers, they were showing they needed to find an extra £100,000 a year to fund it appropriately. They laughed at me, they shouted at me, they said I didn't know what I was doing. And then a week later they came back at full council and I had a written apology from the Section 151 officer saying that I was correct, they had made a mistake, and in the previous year's medium-term financial strategy they had put in an extra £100,000 worth of pressure that didn't exist. And as I pointed out, well, last year they were telling us they couldn't freeze council tax because there was a £100,000 pressure that needed to be covered. There it was. So that's what concerns me, and that's what we know about. And I think you'll find as the weeks and months go on, there will be other things coming to the fore where there are pressures that they've not noticed. And we've seen this before with the waste contract, £80,000 spent on consultants, the problems with Veolia. They don't always, the Labour administration, they don't always have a firm grasp of the detail, which is quite concerning.
So we are 8 weeks away from local elections. Do you think you're able to get those arguments across to the voters of Harlow?
Well, that's why I've been so keen to have a chat with you, Michael, because it's one of the vehicles by which we can do that. But yeah, I'm confident. What we're putting forward is a credible alternative. We're showing that we will be 2.24% council tax lower than Labour. We've shown that on the green agenda, we showed there was money there to do scoping work. So we found £100,000 in the council finances to put in to get the preparatory work for going more green. So for example, more electric points in the town, more solar panels on council buildings. Now the Labour administration moved a climate emergency motion back earlier in the year, and I moved a series of successful amendments to that because I didn't think it went far enough. In their budget they've moved this year, there is no budgetary allowance for any of those measures. So they're making a lot of noise. They want to put themselves forward as being there for the environment, but they're not doing anything about it. So that's another credible difference. I also found £500,000 of money to put into our local schools. So £250,000 would go to our secondary schools and £250,000 would go to our primary schools to boost Key Stage 4 attainment, to help children do better in school and to promote the teaching of modern foreign languages and science at the primary level to help our primary feeder schools. And we showed how that could be done, and the Labour administration voted it down and laughed at us and said they're not an education authority. But they will have education attainment awards which they spend thousands of pounds on every single year, so they pick and choose what they want to do. There's another clear difference between us and them. We've talked about financial competency, and I've shown that we can actually take our discretionary services like museum, Pets Corner, paddling pools, and actually put them on not only a more secure footing by bringing them back into what we call the council's base budget, but actually increase the level of funding for those things. And there are other things we've been proposing above and beyond that.